Hello and welcome to Analysing Avatar. Today we're sitting down to review episode 8 of the first book of Korra Air, the episode titled When Extremes Meet, which for those who don't recall is the episode in which Korra, Mako, Bolin and Asami form a new team Avatar to go out and fight the Equalists, very much in opposition to the approach being taken by Tarlok and his task force, which Korra no longer wants to be a part of. Tarlok starts to push things too far, putting curfews in place for non-benders and other very sort of fascist adjacent things that Korra is convinced will only push people further into Amon's hands, because it proves the point about people who can bend sort of oppressing those who can't. Eventually, Tarlok arrests Asami, Mako, and Bolin. In an attempt to get Korra to sort of force Korra to work with him. She confronts him, and it all goes a bit wrong. There's a big old fight, good old fight, and then Tarlok reveals he can do bloodbending. Very not good for Korra, who he then kidnaps. He promptly kidnaps. He's like, "I'm a bloodbender, now you're kidnapped." That's exact dialogue from the. In fact, that wasn't even me saying that. I just played the clip from the episode.
Yeah, and I think he then goes, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a bloodbender. Anyway, that's the episode recapped thoroughly, I feel. How you feeling, Chris? What do you think?
I'm feeling good, man. I enjoyed it. I thought it was I really liked it. I think Tarlok's a bit dodgy, isn't he? He's coming across like a bit of a bad fella.
You think?
You think? But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought some of it, if we're critiquing, I thought some of it was a little suffers from Korra juggling clunkiness, like the whole. Well, since now that the pro-bending distraction's gone, I suppose you'll be returning to my task force. Like, I thought pro-bending wasn't something you were allowing her to. Do you know what I mean? Like, that makes it sound like she's been on a confirmed leave of absence, even though, you know, he'd previously argued pro-bending wasn't a good enough excuse and she had to join him. So that was a little bit clunky. I'm very confused. You want to know my biggest confusion, Dan?
Yeah, go for it.
They go to travel via
Naga.
Korra's Naga.
Her polar bear
and
dog.
They conclude they can't because they collectively are too heavy.
Yes.
So, where's the car? Because I assume the car is not on Airbending Island. It's in Republic City. Yes. So, we still don't know how they got... Like, don't worry, I've got an idea. We do still need to get across the river, though, guys, actually. So, how are we gonna do that? Considering they had to travel by boat at the beginning of the episode. How did they get over the river back to Republic City to get the car? Because if the car's on Airbending Island... It still doesn't make sense how, you know, one, why it's there, two, how they use that to get across water. I don't understand, Dan. That confused me.
I'd have to look back to check, but I think my assumption is when we next see them and they're jumping in the car, they're in Republic City. So my assumption is they hop the ferry back to Republic City to retrieve the car, which is funny to think about, because it's one of those classic... You know, those classic things where two characters are talking and then it cuts and it's clearly an amount of time has passed, but they're continuing the conversation we were just witnessing. And it's that old movie trope of, did you guys just awkwardly stand in silence? Like, for like the life.
Yeah, and it doesn't, to me, it just doesn't, the immediate problem is we need to get across. So they're just constant ferries going then. Is that it? Yeah. And in that case, why are they try the polar bear when there's a ferry there? Yeah, that was clunky.
It's fair. That's fair. No, it is a bit clunky. And kind of amusing to imagine what happened between that cut. A lot of faff. You know, hey, Team Avatar. All right. We can't get on Naga, so we're gonna get a ferry. Ferry's not for another 15 minutes. Okay. All right, we're just going to stand here for 15 minutes. So, what'd you do at the weekend? Oh, you know, fought Amon's evil henchman. Oh, yeah, same. Oh, the ferry's here. Okay, we can all get on the ferry now. Right, we're back. We're in Republic City. Asami, where's the car? Oh, it's at my dad's old compound. Wow, how are we gonna get there? I guess we get a taxi, maybe? Can we walk? How far is my dad's compound and factory from here? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Off we go. Right, we'll get the bus. We'll get the bus to the car. Hey, we're in the car. Team Avatar. Like the idea that like there must have been, no matter how you slice it, several steps between one and the other. That the episode ignores just to keep it moving. I understand why.
Yeah, I get it. Because like even hearing that jokey version was fucking dull. So I understand why the episode didn't want to include it. But it was just so there were a few elements that were just a little like I don't love. It just feels quite typical of this show to do the whole reveal to Asami that Korra likes Marco, but in no way I just refuse to believe like what you've made me believe about her character. I just struggle to see her just not addressing it right away or talking to Korra about it, and both of them just like letting that hang and be unsaid. And it just it feels like I say, and I'm loving this show. I don't mean it as a criticism, but a bit of classic. We're juggling so many balls that sometimes we're just going to lay a thread, but not deal with it right away. And sometimes I've really liked that, actually. But yeah, in this instance, I was like, that feels weird. Like, I know later on, obviously, she looked at them both in the wing mirror and stuff. But it just, that didn't feel particularly clean either.
Yeah, I mean that stuff, it's all a little like, that's all the dressing of this episode for me. So those things, clunky as they are.
Yeah, for sure.
I think if that stuff was present in sort of the major A plot of this episode, or the major A elements of this story were handled a little clunkily like that, it would maybe be more of an issue for me. But I think because the main plot of this episode, the sort of attempt for Korra to take things into her own hands, being stopped by Tarlok and his politics and his new link with the new police chief, so the loss of Lin Beifong being felt very much there. Tarlok sort of oppressing the non-benders. I think that all that stuff, and then the confrontation at the end that leads to the fight, the reveal of the bloodbending, that's all handled so well, and it's such an interesting episode, and it's such a really powerful plot, and like you just the idea that Korra, like, as if she hasn't got enough to be dealing with Amon and her attempts to learn airbending, but also a corrupt politician is feeding in, to Amon's like narrative by being essentially a sort of, an equivalent of a fascist in this society, like, trying to curfew the non-benders and like treat them as second-class citizens. It's also very well thought out and so cohesive, and it all tracks so well, and it's all executed, I think, really interestingly. I think, while often this city does struggle for like most of the citizens of it being a bit faceless, one thing Last Airbender did better, I think, than this show is the citizens of a place we visit feeling tangible and real and knowing how they feel about things. Often there's just bystanders in this show, but they never feel like people. They feel like NPCs in Grand Theft Auto. You're just sort of driving past them and they're just they're walking up and down the same street because they're not really people. They're just there to make the city look populated. But this episode actually does briefly give us the feeling of real human beings living in Republic City, which is, an improvement over what it normally does. And because all of that stuff is handled so obscenely well, while I don't disagree with any of your criticisms, they don't really sort of spoil it for me, this one, because I think this is such a strong episode in every other area. But I definitely, you're right. The Asami stuff is handled very clunkily and has to be sort of brushed to the side because there's really no time in this episode to actually have that conversation. We just want to sort of set it up, apparently. And obviously the car stuff is kind of silly, but again, I wouldn't want the alternative because the alternative is dull, quite frankly.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe, best way for it to have played out, maybe. The Tarlok one is a little interesting because you talked about, that Tarlok, where the comment where he's like, "Oh, now your pro bending's out the way." I mean, my impression is that like he was never happy with her pro bending and not being on the task force, but now he's like, but now you can't even use that as an excuse anymore. So you're coming back, right? I think that's kind of how I read it, but I understand that might not seem particularly consistent. So yeah, I don't know. It's for me, like, there's so much good stuff in this episode that I was kind of like that. Those quibbles, as valid as they are, certainly didn't detract for me.
Yeah, for sure, and me neither. I was just sort of starting with that place of let's get some nitpicks out the way.
Oh, did we go to nitpick corner without even? Were we just in nitpick corner? We just we woke up. We went to nitpick corner overnight. We woke up in a little Airbnb at nitpick corner. We've started there, and now we're leaving nitpick corner.
I don't. No, I regret using the word nitpicks actually, because like those are wider, I think, issues that are indicative of the show.
Yes.
And therefore they can't be nitpicks.
Yes.
But yes, I because this is, I love the villainy of Tarlok, and I'm not. I mean, it feels too obvious, the notion that he's a non, and I can't remember whether that we've seen anything to contradict that, whether we've seen them together in the same room. But maybe certainly it's certainly a bit like everything is playing into his hands as well as a non, and that's beginning to feel like that might be deliberate, or that there's more of a link there. But I loved all the stuff with him at the end. The bloodbending reveal was really like daunting, and really cool, really nicely done. Again, it makes sense that would have evolved as well, and that is another way in which bending has evolved. Sorry. So yeah, I really liked that reveal. I thought that was really interesting and cool, and that whole fight sequence between the two of them in general was just
good,
really great.
It's so good. Yeah. Like I wrote in my notes, best fights in this show so far? ? I think maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, especially like the whole you're out of water. Like, what are you gonna do now? Like, oh, so good.
Yeah, like Korra framed in the broken wall with the light streaming through, so she's kind of silhouetted. She's like, how am I, my half-baked avatar now? But like their whole fight in his office, which, by the way, I'm sorry. Tarlok, we got an office for you over here. Okay, yeah, I might add a large water feature. Sorry? Yeah, I might add a thing with a big giant waterfall behind the desk. Do you not think that's sort of a bit much? A bit Bond villain, Tarlok? Nah, it'd be fine. Like, is that not the most villainous office you've ever seen in your life? Like, I love it. From a design perspective, it's great. But if that's not the office of a Bond villain, I don't know what is.
Yeah, he might as well have been stroking a cat.
Yeah. I like, the second she got in there, I distinctly remember the second she got in there on my very first viewing being like, that's your office? Like, suddenly I'm not sure you've got everyone's best interest at heart. Like, if I hadn't been already convinced that might be a problem, you're about 2 seconds away from tying her to a table and having a laser beam, coming along. It's like, in 5 minutes you'll be dead, Korra. Then leave the room after explaining your evil plan. Yeah, it's very overt, but cool design, and it plays into the fight really well. So I'm not complaining. It's just an observation. Obviously as well, the big guns. We got more flashbacks, including what appeared to me to be Sokka. I've not gone back, but it looked like Sokka and Zuko were in that flashback. Some sort of courtroom drama going down. Yeah, I really, that's very exciting. The notion that now, before I was like, it'd be lazy to do flashbacks, and now I'm like, Sokka? Yeah, do flashbacks. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So I wrote down what I thought I saw in the flashbacks, and I deliberately didn't go back to freeze frame or anything like that because I thought that might be a bit much. But what I thought I saw was a courtroom, like yourself, Sokka, Toph, and then Aang reaching out to a person that was handcuffed in the middle of the courtroom.
Maybe it was Toph, not Zuko then. I thought it looked like
it could have been Zuko as well. That's the thing, is so many images fly by. I honestly, Zuko, it could very well be that there's Toph and Zuko, and I caught Toph and you caught Zuko. It could. I wouldn't rule that out. I thought I saw Toph. So yeah, I mean, obviously, other than super cool to see them, and also a little hint that Korra's finally getting her spiritual side maybe a little bit more in line, which might be hinting at her progress airbending wise, because I feel like a little bit her airbending block is connected to her spiritual block. You know, I feel like whatever's stopping her from being able to airbend really is tied to that. I think. So any progress she makes in one to me is like a little bit of progress to the other. So how do other than the element of how it plays into Korra's progress, anything you want to extract from that or from that scene?
Yeah, well, especially with Tenzin being like, I think Aang's trying to tell you something. It's clearly there's some sort of backstory here to the, whoever that other guy who appeared to be, because that was the other thing that I saw. Some dude appeared who we didn't know appeared to be bloodbending or doing something of the kind. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's either somehow related to Taluk or it feels like that's the backstory of all of this business. The business. So the business of Anon, the business of Taluk. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that's the backstory of this. I can't necessarily piece it together. Well, apart from as rudimentally as someone wants revenge for or someone was wronged by bending in that moment, or felt they were wronged by Aang, or want revenge against Aang, and Aang's dead, so it's the next Avatar sort of thing.
Yeah. I think that makes a certain amount of sense. Actually, we haven't gone back to it yet. You did sort of hint that you were wondering what the link is between Tarlok and Amon. My tongue just doing what it wants today. I'm going to make all the wrong sounds. That's what's going to happen. You sort of hinted that you might think there's a link there because it was it almost felt deliberate, like how much he was playing into Amon's hands. So you think all these stories are like directly linked?
Yeah, I think, and also with like episode 8 of 12, I think we're building to bringing everything together. So yeah, I think they're definitely linked for sure. Because
because I mean, obviously Tarlok so is a waterbender. It would be for them to be associated either in because there's two ways I guess that plays out. Should you be correct? One is they're working together. Two is Tarlok and Amon are the one and the same. Amon's wearing a mask. Could literally be anyone. So that's definitely on the table. Do you not think the being a bender thing would be hypocritical for a villain? I suppose is fine. But like, do you not think that kind of goes against his message, his goal?
Well, go over to your alcohol drawer, people. Pull out your favourite spirit. And get a shot glass and take a shot, baby, because Voldemort was half-blood.
Right. Yeah, hypocrisy in a villain is not unheard of. True.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that's I don't think that would be necessarily an issue because there would be, maybe it's a power thing. That would be quite lazy. I'd hope it was more than that. But, maybe it's some people, Dan, just want to watch the world burn. I believe they say in The Dark Knight. So yeah, that doesn't stop me. That's not a counter for my thought in my head. No.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess prodding any further would be kind of pointless because at this point there's so much still sort of unknown. It's still kind of fuzzy. I think you're on the right track though. I mean, in terms of
were you thinking that? Let's do the classic. Can you remember how you felt?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like I can't remember exactly like whether I was having similar thoughts to you about like Tarlok's involvement or anything like that, but it did start to. I was starting to sense that maybe the events that we were seeing were more connected than it initially seemed. That they're all. I couldn't quite see the tissue that connected them, if that makes sense. But I could tell we were sort of actually set what seemed like several plots might actually be one plot. For sure, because I think Aang giving her flashbacks when she was facing Amon, and then the first time, Well, not the first time, the second time at the pro bending tournament finale, and then again here, while fighting Tarlok, you sort of think if Aang is telling her something about her situation, and there's been flashes twice during fights, but with two seemingly very separate entities, there must be some sort of link. Like, maybe I can't piece what it is, but this isn't like necessarily just two separate stories that are occurring. This might actually be related. So at the very least, I'd gotten to that point for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether I'd like decided if I thought Tarlok and Ammon were the same or working together or whatever the what the background is, unclear. I mean, because I to be fair, I don't even think at this point you could rule out the possibility that they are separate, not directly working together, but they are related still somehow, but not necessarily in the overt way. It could be that Ammon's manipulating Tarlok as much as anything, but it all felt like it was all coming to a head into one story for sure.
But even that manipulation could be because there's a connection between the two. He's able to manipulate because he knows him in some way.
Right. But that could literally be as simple as like, because obviously we don't know who's behind that mask yet. Maybe someone else on that weirdly voiceless council is whispering in Tarlok's ear and is actually Ammon. There's ways this could be they could be connected in a less overt way or a way that I guess Tarlok is less aware of. It also wouldn't surprise me at this stage for Tarlok to just turn out to be like a greedy politician or a dumb politician that's been been completely like pushed into doing things that help Ammon because he's been easily sort of wound around someone's finger or paid off or whatever.
What did you think of the whole? Just because I'm aware we've been on this a while. What did you think of the whole overtness of the Team Avatar? Because like we've been calling them like the new Team Avatar anyway.
Yeah.
Did you think it was a bit much to sort of, especially when, you know what? I don't think it would be a bit much were it not for the fact that we also had that moment between Asami and Korra, and know that there's all this sort of angsty tension. Well, let's call it what it is, love triangle bullshit. Like, I'm like, you can't sort of, I think it's counter, no, what's the word?
I mean, yeah, it might be counterproductive.
Yeah, that might be the word. Or it's too countering. It's too juxtaposing to in one scene go, there's all this tension in the air, and then in the next be like, Team Avatar. Like, I felt that they didn't need to use the phrase in the show. I felt like they didn't need to be so overt in the show. Personally, what was your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I literally wrote in my notes, the new Team Avatar stuff is a little on the nose. I agree. Yeah. The idea that they've kind of decided their Team Avatar and are saying that, I think, to be fair, I think it kind of makes sense. In a world where you've probably heard stories of Aang and his friends saving the world, growing up, if you've heard those stories and you're a little friendship group around the Avatar, the idea that you might want to ape what came before you does feel like the sort of unoriginal nonsense a teenager would come up with. So I'm not questioning the likelihood that a group of teenagers in this situation would do that. But just from a show perspective, it just feels a little too winking, a little too aware, and a little too on the nose. I don't mind it sort of contrasting with what's really going on, because I think I feel like that makes sense also, because it's like, on the surface we're all good buddies, but we've all been in those situations where we've been in friendship groups where there's some tension that maybe isn't really being addressed. So, when you're hanging out as a big wide group, it's all everyone's getting on, and all the sort of like not so happy stuff is happening like more subtly and in little passive-aggressive comments, or maybe a little when people break off into little groups, like, "Did you hear what that person said?" That sort of thing. So, we've all...
Is that how you talk when you're being bitchy? Did you hear what that person said over there?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was very controversial. I don't know about you. Anyway, I'll leave it with you.
Now let me summon Stebbins. Stebbins. My butler's called Stebbins. I've invented a butler called Stebbins.
Mate, if you had a butler, you wouldn't be putting up your Christmas decorations with shitty sellotape. Let me tell you now.
That's either a callback or not a callback, depending on whether I left the beginning of this podcast in. That's either a callback to a podcast from 2 or 3 weeks ago, or you've been recently reminded of that, the listener. You'll find out.
Yeah, I'll keep it in because that just sounds mean if you've not kept in the first part.
Yeah, that's true. So for me, I think I don't mind that minor, like, almost contradiction. Maybe that's the word you're looking for, because it does feel like it is a contradiction for them to be all, we're all friends, and then, like, giving each other the side eye, like the wing mirror and what have you. But I think that's design. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's poor writing. I think that's like sort of one of those very deliberate contradictions where they're behaving one way and maybe feeling a different way. So I don't mind that so much, but I agree with you. Very deliberately calling yourself Team Avatar is maybe... I don't think it's out of the realms of reality for these characters to do that. I just or logic for those characters to do that. I just wish they didn't, because it just feels a bit on the nose, and it also feels a little bit like this show being like, "Hey, Team Avatar, wink, wink." They did the same. I got the same problem with, like, there was one of the joke in this episode that had the same vibe to me, where it was like just a reference to an old thing, and I was just like, maybe not. Like, what was the? I'll have a think. I'll have to remember. My brain has just died on me, and I've forgotten. So I will move us on. I also thought, separately to that though, that moment being interrupted by a Milo fart joke. When they were all like, "Team Avatar." Probably a more obnoxious use of the character Milo that I'm less fond of.
Yeah, I didn't like. It's not really. Yeah, it was farting humour, isn't it? And I don't mind farting humour. I like a good fart joke, but that was just a bit. I don't think those characters. I don't think that moment. They all. I think the issue I have with that joke is they all laugh after, and it's like, "Oh, we're bonding. We're laughing at the farting kid." When actually you'd be like, "What the fuck, dude? Back it off."
Yeah, and also it's a little on the nose that there's a child that can airbend, and he's like falling in farting, like it's like he's it was one step away from I'm fart bending, which is not.
I hadn't put that together. I actually like it more now.
All right, well, keep it here, kids, for updates on fart bending. Will we have more fart bending going forward? Is that a new form of airbending that we're going to be getting more of? Is it the equivalent to metal bending and blood bending? We'll find out.
What do you think of Team Avatar getting arrested? Do you think that's why they did it? Do you think that's why to link one topic to another? Do you think they were like, well, let's have the triumphant, we're the team, and then they get pulled apart?
Poor timing, cough. Thank you. I think it's twofold. It's you want Korra on her own for the Tarlok confrontation at the end, and you want to have pushed Korra to a point where she's willing to do that, because it's a bold move going to confront Tarlok on his own in the middle of the night for two reasons. One, politically and publicly, like, Tarlok could do a lot of damage to her reputation if he's clearly got the public's ear. But second, God, what if he hadn't been at his office? That'd have been a wasted trip, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah,
what are you doing, Korra? But so she's lucky that he's a workaholic. That's bit of luck there. No, but it practically speaking, yeah, I think you kind of, there's two reasons to do the Avatar thing. One is the one we already talked about. The other is to get her alone, so she has a good reason to fight and go after Tarlok. And it makes a lot of sense that, regardless of what his actual motivations are, and we've speculated on 2 or 3 different things that he could be up to, but either way, she's clearly presenting a problem for him, and actually separating her from her friends is the move. So it makes a lot of sense for him. It makes a lot of sense to motivate her. It's just a really smart plot device, I think, on a few different levels, and it has this added effect, especially if you start the episode with them all being like, "We're a team." To immediately separate them is clever, and also I think says something about this show's both love for, but also willingness to differentiate itself from the original. You know, you think we got the Team Avatar? No, this is a different kind of show. They're immediately split up. So yeah, I'm on board with it. I think it works well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's fair, and I think it's just a really this show has a great way of like ending episodes with great, more so I think in memory than Avatar particularly did. Like they're like actual cliffhangers in this show. Like before, there'd be like the occasional, what does this mean for the future? Like, you know, Zuko says something vaguely mysterious and threatening and looks off into the distance on a boat. But like this has like actual like cliffhangers.
Yeah.
And I think that's really exciting. At the end of this episode, all the pieces are in a really kind of gripping formation, which I really like.
Yeah. I would agree. I think this episode has some really good, interesting politics as well. Like, you could absolutely see, like, especially, and this is gonna sound like a loaded statement, but in a post 9/11 world, Chris, where we've seen governments, I know, I knew what was coming when I said that, but when we've seen a world where governments have taken advantage of terrorist activity, essentially, to put rules into place to get things, right, that they've wanted maybe all along, right? You know, the excuse that gave certain world powers to do certain things. I'm not going to get into the actual real world politics of it, but we have plenty of real world examples of an event happening, like a terrorist incident, that has led to a government maybe overreaching following that, right? So Tarlok saying like, well, we've got to protect our citizens, so we essentially have to oppress them, and doing a power grab makes a lot of sense, regardless of whether he is or isn't directly connected to Ammon. Like, everything he does makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you know, for sure.
And it's both reflecting real world politics, but also like just as a character, like it's so overtly it's like it's the thing Stan Lee talks about with Doctor Doom being such a good villain, because you know, if I don't know, the Rhino in Spider-Man wants to rob a bank, that's against the law, right? That's illegal. Doctor Doom being a political power and being like, well, I kind of want to take over the world, that's not necessarily illegal, depending on like how he goes about it. You know, world leaders taking land and stuff, you know, there are ways sanctioned war occurs, you know. Russia annexed another country a couple of years ago, and everyone just kind of went, that's shit, but cool, I guess. Like, it's, Putin didn't go into handcuffs. So, like, what's interesting about Tarlok's position in this episode, and as a villain in general, is it's not illegal what he's doing. Immoral, yes, but it is well within the powers of a government to, for the quote-unquote safety of their people, put in place curfews. Put in place rules, arrest people they suspect might be, related to terrorists. It's all so sinister, but not in a way that immediately is like, well, that person should immediately be arrested, and stuck in a cell. So it's very well done.
But do you think Talak actually believes those people? Surely he knows Korra's right in that moment. He knows they're just innocent people. Talking specifically about the people that get arrested at the protest, he knows they're just innocent people that want their power back on, right?
Yeah, I mean, but Trump knew those families that were coming in from Mexico were just looking for somewhere to live when he separated them from their children. It didn't stop him from doing it and using, oh well, we think there's criminals mixed in as his excuse. I think it all really neatly parallels real world right-wing politics, I specifically sort of fascist politics. It's all from the fascist playbook, isn't it? And I think for a kids TV show, like it's a really, well, it's an interesting topic to tackle, but also like to have it. handled in that way where, you know, if you know real world examples, you see it, and if you don't, it's just you learn. you learn young how politicians might get what they want out of situations. Because I agree with you. I don't think for a second Tarlok thinks those people are actually dangerous. But I think he's wielding his power. He's getting his control. He's getting his oppression. You know, whether it be for Ramon's benefit, if they are linked, or if it be politician grabbing for power for himself, you know, wanting to oppress, proving Amon right because there are benders like that in the world. Either way, it tracks, and that's what's so clever about it, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and it's you know, it's doing politics for children better than something like the Star Wars prequels did it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like to come up with and do it in a way where it's making those points without overtly stating it's making those points, but equally not hiding them either. None of this is metaphors in the show. No. You know, it's all actually the thing. It's just the writing of the political elements of it is really, really clever.
I think so, because it's managed to do allegory mixed in with its like just its own, like, because you could easily look at any of this stuff as being like, well, that's just the politics of the world of Avatar, quote unquote. You know, it's just this sort of fake, you know, fantasy world's makeshift version of it, and like you know, you could watch this and not. I mean, I would find it hard to believe somebody said they didn't see any allegories for real politics in it if they were reasonably politically engaged. But for a young person or a child to watch this and not really see that in it, yeah, absolutely. I think it's designed to be able to be seen both ways, I think. And and you know, hopefully, you know, shows like this will educate kids on the things to look out for. When they're of voting age, maybe they can sniff out some fascism when it's hiding in plain sight. That'd be good. I wouldn't be against that. But yeah, I agree. I think they handle it really well. The show, it's balanced perfectly. To move us on, because we have been talking about that for a long time. How did we feel about like the early stuff in this episode, where we're introducing them to you know, Air Temple Island? You know, Iki giving the game away with Asami, but the idea that they've got air acolytes. There was a few different elements introduced in the early part of the episode. Did any of that sort of stand out to you? Any comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I liked all of that stuff. Like I say, I don't mind Iki saying it. I don't like the fact that it was just left hanging. So I don't have any objection to her saying it though, and the way they did that with her sort of Korra's rage face, I thought was very funny, and then Ika having that same rage face when Korra sort of slams the door on her, I thought was very funny. So yeah, I liked all the Air Temple stuff. I thought you got some good comedy from Bolin asking all the questions. Yes. And I love. I can't remember which child it is that answers, but I just love the yes, no, 1,542 or whatever.
Yeah,
it was.
Yes. I think that might be Iki as well. Oh no, maybe that's Chinora. I'm not sure. It's one of the two. But yeah, that's a funny bit. And I also really enjoy, the male quarters of this way, and Bolin being the last one to leave, just like, oh yeah, I'm a boy, and like following along. That's funny too.
Yeah.
I
liked all that stuff. I thought it added a good amount of brevity to the first half of the episode before we get into the fairly dramatic second half.
Yeah, and the interesting sort of, I don't know if it's a reveal or if they've been in previous episodes, but the notion of the air acolytes. So people in sort of following the airbending ways, helping, you know, the working on Air Temple Island, maybe even living on Air Temple Island, learning the sort of the spiritual side of it, but not necessarily airbenders. I thought that was an interesting idea because, of course, you know, the Earth, the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation, you know, the Water Tribes, they have non-benders and benders as part of their community. So it kind of makes sense that Air Temple Island has some non-benders who have taken up the ways, or at least the learnings culturally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's a nice idea. Although, you know, absolutely not at all explored. You have to assume all of that.
No, but I mean, the episode doesn't have time to explore that, though, does it, to be fair?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Did you enjoy Milo kind of being all like, "Hey, pretty lady, can I have some of your hair?" With Asami.
I found that very funny. Yeah. And then when he leaves and he's like, "See you soon, pretty lady." Like, yeah. I found all that very funny. I really like that we're getting characterization for those kids, and that the characters and the personalities of those kids are coming through. I don't know how much time we're necessarily going to be able to spend with them, but the fact that every time we do spend any time with them, it's fun is, I think, the right approach. Like, okay, well, let's just make every scene they're in so much fun.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that'd be a great move.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, if going forward, it's nice to have a wide cast of characters to explore. Like, if should we reach like obviously during this season they might not have necessarily known they were doing more of the show, but like in a world where you might get a second, third, or fourth season, the idea that you'd have these characters ready to potentially explore in more depth, sort of, is a good idea, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
Just in the terms of the long-term thinking, and also it's nice to see what is essentially tiny bits of Aang coming through in his grandkids. I think there's a little Aang in all of those kids, but just different parts of him.
Yeah, a lot of it felt very Aang, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Especially Milo being very sort of chaotic, except for the fart bending. That didn't feel very Aang.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because, and obviously we're dealing with airbending here.
Yes.
But none of it feels very Katara, does it?
That's a really good point. Well, I'll give you a tease, Chris. A little tease for the future. There are 2 other kids.
Oh, okay, right, okay. That maybe lean more towards waterbending.
So there's we've already had their names. I think in the first episode. I think it's Boomy and I want to say Kira. Damn, I feel bad that I don't remember the names.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm gonna feel stupid when I don't.
It's definitely Boomy. That's right. I think I remember I remember complimenting that one of their children was named after Boomy.
Yes, 100%. Kaya. I was close. Kaya is the third child. So all I'm saying is, you've yet to meet the other 2, and it makes sense that if Tenzin specifically was an airbender, that he will have brought his kids up, sort of, in an attempt to sort of bring Aang's culture that was lost, back to the world. That doesn't necessarily mean Kaya and Boomy went that way. Mm-hmm.
Nice to know if there's some tension there.
Little teasers for you, Chris, for the future. So the new police chief also in Tarlok's pocket. I think that is also very some of the show's quite clever handling of political stuff. This is not uncommon. He sort of bullied Lin Beifong out of her position as chief of police, and it's clear that he did that because he already had someone in his pocket ready to step into the role who would lend that extra force and power of the police to Tarlok and his task force. I thought that was very, very good. And again, using fear to manipulate the other members of the board, as it were, the council, to agree to his new rules made a lot of sense to me as well. Let's see.
Yeah, I agree. I like that too.
This is the first episode for a little while that's looked at Korra's lack of being able to airbend and actually talked about that. I mean, the book is called Air. There's not been a whole heap of that. How are you feeling about how that's being handled so far?
Yeah, I think actually it's not something I caught when watching the episode, but hearing you go, the book is called Air, and going, yeah, and we've only got, that was episode 8, right? So we've only got 4 left.
Yeah, that
isn't actually great, and there would have been, there's been opportunities. Like, this episode presents an awesome opportunity for when she's introducing or they're doing the tour, and over there that's where Korra's been practicing airbending, or you know what I mean, even just a reference. Like, she's done a lot of pro bending, and I know that's meant to link and all that stuff, but we haven't seen any of it really, and this episode would have been an easy excuse to have some of it there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, like, when the episode started and they were talking about her lack of airbending so far, I went, oh, finally, okay, cool. Like, because my memory is that they handled it to some degree. I've been a little disappointed at how little, if I'm being honest. Yeah, it's quite shocking. Especially when, as you said, there's 4 episodes left. It does seem crazy that it seems crazy we're only 4 episodes away from being done with this season. That's mad.
Yeah, and it seems crazy that, like, we'll soon be back to rewind reviews.
My God, yeah, we will. Wow. Yes. Well, the season after this one, I think, is a little longer. I think it's 14 episodes instead of 12. But yeah, it's because we're the last series of Avatar we did. Like, obviously, we're all 20-odd episodes, so to have this shorter season is it's gonna take some getting used to, Chris. This structure, but so yeah, it is a disappointment a little bit that they've not really focused too much on, because in the old show, what did they used to do? It was like, they'd have an episode where Aang, like, couldn't do the bending in question, couldn't water bend, couldn't fire bend, couldn't air bend, whatever. Airbend. Do his earth bending, whatever. Then they did an episode where he discovered doing it the first time physically. Oh, I finally moved water. Oh, I finally moved earth. Oh, finally created fire. And then there's a lot of, like, have you been doing your earthbending practice, Aang? A lot of, like, side references. Like, we're not seeing it happen, but we know it's happening as they're traveling around.
Well, adventure, and that's the one downside of the cliffhanger approach, because the Avatar approach meant you could sort of reset at the beginning of the next episode, and you could start an episode with some sort of training taking place. Whereas with this, because it's so serialized and so cliffhanger to cliffhanger, where's the gap in which she would have done some airbending stuff, Yeah.
So we haven't come back and, like, we've only done it once or twice where, like, some time has passed. That's only happened a couple of times. Most episodes have led pretty cleanly into the next, which is you're right, has left you almost no time to imagine training is occurring. Only 1 or 2 episodes have really given us the opportunity for that, and those were quite early on. The more recent episodes have definitely all led straight into each other. So yeah, there's definitely something to be. Again, we talked about this early on. For me, Korra is, like, a really good show that is, like, flawed in some notable ways. That's one of them, I think, for this season so far. That and some of the concerns we've had about, like, the love triangle rhombus. Love rhombus. I needed love triangle bullshit, and I tried to change it, and I changed it too late. I'd already said love and triangle, so then I ended up with love triangle rhombus, which isn't a thing. So yeah, I think that's something we're going to keep an eye out for. As a note, I really enjoyed Asami acquiring an Equalist glove and being like, well, if they're going to use these weapons, I don't got bending. I'm going to do the same. I thought that was good. Liked it.
Yeah, I liked that. And I mean, I think, like Sokka, she could have easily defended herself and could easily fight without that. But especially given that last episode we did the horrible, no, you stay here thing, doing the, right, well, I've got a fucking weapon now thing makes sense, I suppose. But she doesn't need it. She could handle herself without it for sure.
Yeah, she probably could. But I like that she's using it. And also it makes sense that she has it. Like, unlike the car, we know she was wearing an Equalist glove when she left the factory last week because she used it to zap a dad. Yeah. So it makes sense that she has that just handy. I also like... I don't know where she's gotten this from or why she'd installed this ahead of time, but her car is got a built-in police scanner. Sure.
They cover that in the episode. She says that her father had them installed in all his cars, and now she realizes why.
Oh, I must have missed that line. There you go. Good work. Good spot.
Yeah, it's covered. Covered in the ep.
One of my other favourite moments in the episode, Chris, Tenzin finally getting to be a little bit funny when the police chief is being stonewalling them, and he's like, "It's okay, Korra. We just need to, we need to regroup. We'll approach the council in the morning. We just need to be patient." And then he turns back around. But you really are the worst ever.
Yeah,
it's delivered.
Like, I mean,
incredibly as well by J.K. Simmons.
so much attention driven to the council meeting, though. I'm assuming he's getting kicked off the council. And that was just sort of setting up. And I was like, the minute he said that, I'm like, oh, someone's losing their seat on the council.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's certainly interesting, isn't it? Because we know, Tarlok definitely seems to have the other council members under his thumb. I wish the other council members were a bit more characterized, to be honest with you. There are these weird sort of faceless, voiceless. Like, have any of them said anything other than raising and not raising their hands in previous episodes? Like, they feel very...
there was sometimes it's that room's kind of animated that they're almost like blurry figures as well.
Yeah,
maybe
they're like it's like they're literally part of the background. I've noticed this. It's weird, right?
Yeah, it is weird. It is weird for sure.
It's like, there's only ever 2 people talking in that room, or 3 if Korra comes in or Lin comes in. But it's only ever Tenzin and Tarlok having an argument.
Yeah, and everyone else just sort of watching it.
Yeah, I can hear it now. And here we are in Republic City, the council are meeting. Of course, as we all know, 3 members of the council are mute. The debate will simply be built up of Tenzin and Tarlok making points, and then they'll vote.
And they will only talk about things relevant to the ongoing plot. The general day-to-day running of the town will not be covered here.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I want. I want next week for it to open up, and for one of the ones that hasn't spoken yet to be like, right, so one of the districts has got some irrigation system issues. We think some of the pipes are blocked, so we might need to get some earthbenders down there to widen those. Garbage collection. Actually, we're having some trouble with this. There's been a build-up. I want to hear someone talking about, like, just what issues are Republic City facing that aren't equalists or gangs. I want to hear about zoning.
And congestion, now that the cars are a thing.
Yeah.
The council have introduced their congestion zone all around Republic City. People are up in arms.
Yeah, the people aren't actually protesting Tarlok's curfew. They're protesting Tarlok's new congestion charge. If you head into the city centre, you must pay a fee.
Anyone firebending must also pay a fee for releasing fumes into the air.
So yeah.
Any other notes, Dan?
Good question, Chris. Let's have a look. I've only got a couple that I've not removed because I delete them as we go, as we talk about them, to try and prevent me from at the end just going through everything we've already done. We've talked about that. We talked about most of this. Most of this stuff at the end now is just like it's the only notes I've got left are about the final sequence, which we have talked about. You know, the her saying to him, you know, you're using your powers to oppress and intimidate. She even says you need to be stopped. You're just as bad as Amon. I did like his logic that's what she was doing. We haven't talked about this, but she comes in. She says like you're oppressing people, you're intimidating them, and he's like, isn't that what you're doing now? You're literally bursting into my office to intimidate me. How are you any better? And he's right. He's exactly right.
I like that.
I think it's always nice when a villainous or antagonistic character has a good point.
Which this show does often.
Yes. Both versions of this show have been good at that. And obviously, the final moment I just wrote down the quote: "You're in my way, Avatar, and you need to be removed." So before we go on to Triv, obviously she's kidnapped at the end of the episode. Any thoughts on because obviously everyone else is like it's the only person not currently. Oh, we got two people out in the world that aren't arrested or trapped in some way. Tenzin obviously is out and about, and will probably wake up to discover the Avatar is no longer around, and will presumably have some concerns about that. We have Lin, who we know is out there trying to rescue those police officers that were kidnapped in the last episode, but we haven't seen her since then, so God knows where she is. But the rest of Team Avatar are in prison. And Korra is been kidnapped by Tarlok. So where do we think we're going next week? What do you think's happening? Any theories?
Some sort of escape, I'd imagine. Maybe Tenzin gets involved. Lin, maybe. I can see maybe Tenzin saving the team and the wider team and the gang, and Lin saving Korra. Maybe. I think Lin's the key, especially because Lin's gone outside the law. Like, I think Lin will be the key to the escapes in some form. Would be my if I'm predicting, that's what I'd predict.
Fair enough. Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. Wouldn't it be funny if I was like, and I think I'll predict, and then I just told you the exact plot of the next episode.
But you didn't even do it through memory. You read it on Wikipedia. You read it out as it is on Wikipedia or whatever.
Yeah. Which would take ages because the descriptions on these Wikipedia pages are often very detailed. Right, so in that case, Chris, you know what time it is. Do the thing.
It's time to triv it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia.
Yeah, boy.
So, reading right to left, Asami's police scanner reads from 1 to 12 using Chinese numerals.
I thought that's how you were introducing the triv. Reading right to left, my first point is... I don't think you need to clarify, Dan, but all right.
Reading left to right, franchise Avatar that in Bled has character a time third that is this. Sorry, did I read the trivia wrong? Shall I go forward?
Yeah, go. You should have announced it, Dan. Go right to left instead.
I see. This is the first time that a character is seen bleeding in Legend of Korra. This is when Korra is cut by icicles fired by Tarlok. This is the third time a character has bled in the Avatar franchise. Not including all the times people bled in the Blue Cat movies, am I right?
Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, it's bad.
Oh, right, okay. I haven't seen
movie.
it yet.
It's a shit. It'll be, by the time this goes out, it'll already probably be gone from cinemas, I'm assuming. But it's one of those things where, like, I hate the fact that a movie that bad is a movie I also have to tell people you probably should see at the cinema, though. Because if you're ever going to have to sit through it, at least sit through it with the, big screen, 3D, all the good bits. Because that's what'll get you through the 3 hours. And also, James Cameron put out a statement the other day where he said something like, the first two movies are the table setting, the third one is the meal. Fuck you, James Cameron. Just fuck you. What a piece of shit. I'm sorry, if I went to a restaurant and it took them 6 hours to fucking set the table for the meal, I'm walking out. How dare you waste my time like that, you absolute piece of shit.
But he doesn't mean that. Do you think it's because so much has been made of, like, it breaking even? Do you think he's just doing a bit of damage control?
I don't know.
And
what
being
he's
like,
doing.
it does.
For all I know, the man's having a breakdown.
Because I could have sworn they filmed them really close together, didn't they? So surely working out the true actual budget and money of these movies is going to be a ball ache, surely, because they were filmed consecutively. So
two and three were filmed together. He's not got budget or has not yet sat down to film 4 though, so that's what he's trying to get. He wants to film 4 and 5. But this one's done okay, so they'll probably get made. But here's my thing. Second one. It's the same movie as the first one. Maybe like slightly, like the characterization is slightly better, but it is mostly just flat nonsense. It's just, it's more of the same. If you didn't like the first one, this ain't going to change your mind. I'll tell you that.
I'll probably watch it at some point. I'm not watching it. I'm not going to the cinema to watch it, so I'll catch it on streaming.
Yeah, and then you won't even have the visuals to pull you through.
No, probably not. But
and also on that note, I know this is unrelated, but I tell you what, whichever person, whether it be James Cameron or someone in his production team or whatever, decided to use multiple frame rates across the movie, fuck you. Like, fuck you. Like, you need to be in a prison cell. It's one of the most horrendous elements of any film I've ever had to sit through. The irritation to my eyes when it kept speeding up and slowing down, shot to shot, not scene to scene, shot to fucking shot. It was basically criminal. What an embarrassing choice. I already don't care for a higher. I already don't care for a higher frame rate on a movie, but fuck you for that. Anyway, this truly is analysing Avatar this week. So for those who don't know, we're recording this early January, and like the movie's not been out that long. You guys are probably hearing this in March and being like, "Yeah, guys, what good up to date work talking about Avatar, that movie that came out 4 months ago." But yeah, for us, it's reasonably recent, and it's a bad movie. Sorry, don't at me. I don't care. You're wrong. If you liked it, you're wrong. Don't at me. Also, don't at me
Tell
because I
us-
don't
tell
use
us-
Twitter anymore. But
Stop holding back, Dan. Tell us what you really think.
yeah, it's a bad movie. That's what I think. Oh,
Kate Winslet good at least?
Oh, it's we're water people now until the next movie when we move to a different part of Pandora for some reason. Maybe the volcanoes for the fire Na'vi. Fuck those movies, man. Anyway,
We've been talking about this way too long, but is Kate Winslet good at least? I like Kate Winslet.
yeah, sure. The performances generally are pretty good. But every character is so underserved. I don't even know what to. Oh, and also the choice to have Sigourney Weaver voice a young girl and portray a young girl is horrendous. Hi, Dad. Hi, Dad. Hi, Dad. She sounds like a woman who smoked 1,000 cigarettes. It's like, no offense to Sigourney Weaver, that voice coming out of that child's mouth is so upsetting and so wrong.
And feels for the wrong reason. Like, just to either give her another part or accept that you, spoilers, killed the character off in the first one, and therefore, unfortunately, there's no role for Sigourney Weaver in the second.
Right. What's even worse is, Chris, they find a way to bring Grace in through like flashbacks, videos, things like that. So Sigourney Weaver would have had a role.
Yeah. Just do that.
Bad. It's a bad movie. It's a bad movie made by idiots. I don't know what anyone. I don't know. The story is awful. The characters are so thin. It's all very bad. And the minute that anyone sees that without the sheen of the 3D and the spectacle, it's just going to be exposed the way the last one was as just a flat, uninteresting. Yeah, it's not a good movie. I say the action's a little better.
Yeah.
The final set piece, that's better than the first movie. I was more invested in that than the first one. I'll give you that. There you go. There's a compliment for the movie.
There you go. There we go.
Right.
What else we got?
Yes, let's get to the trip. So, Tarlok and Korra's duel at City Hall bears similarities to the encounter between Avatar Roku and Fire Lord Sozin when Roku had discovered that Sozin's Earth Kingdom colonies existed in the Avatar and the Fire Lord. In both cases, the Avatar arrived at a government building to confront a politician from their own nation about their previous actions against a people they held power over. In both cases, the politician struck first. I don't know, again, if that's a deliberate, like, making it rhyme and sort of match with the other show, or if that's just kind of like, we're hitting on similar themes. I'm not certain, but cool nonetheless. Similar thoughts on this one, actually. Korra declines Tarlok's offer to rejoin the task force by dismissing it as nothing more than a vanity project. This was the same reason that Colonel Shin Yu used in The Blue Spirit when he refused to supply Zhao his archers in his quest to find the Avatar. He told Zhao that his attempt to capture the Avatar was a vanity project. Again, possibly. I mean, I never rule out the possibility this stuff is all deliberately linked and matching and referencing itself, but I think sometimes when you're just dealing with a show that's gone on for as many episodes as this, sometimes you're going to have similar lines or premises and ideas. And
I don't personally believe that's deliberate at all. Like it's
I
cool
don't
and
either,
nice,
but also I don't want to rule it out just in case. But yeah,
no, that's fair.
I don't think so. The moment where Pabu licks away a distraught Korra's tears was inspired by Brian Kinitsko, who we've often referred to on this podcast as Bri, being comforted by his own dog after the two of them had a violent encounter with a loose dog. So a loose dog had gone to attack them. He was upset, and the dog had licked away his tears. I will say this: that may have seemed like a really sweet moment. I don't want to upset you, Bri, but tears are salty, and dogs like salt. That is why they do that.
Jesus. James Cameron, Bri's childhood memories. Nobody's safe from Dan today, my friends.
I'm on a tear, and we'll see who's next. But no, that's the reason dogs generally lick you. Is if you've been sweating, particularly, they'll do it as well because your sweat contains salt also.
Oh, that explains why my cousin's got a dog, and in the summer at a barbecue, that dog was all over me. And at Christmas, they weren't particularly attacking me or trying to lick me in the same way. But I would have obviously been sweatier in the summer.
Yes. Yeah. You're salty.
Oh, I'm very salty, mate. Not as salty as you're being on this podcast about James Cameron and Bri, but still.
So
I once went to on the. I don't know if I certainly. I don't think I've told the story. On the on the UK's hottest day ever recorded, which was a couple of summers ago. Me and a friend went to a gig in a small venue in London called the ULU. We went to see a Canadian band called Arkells. It was an incredible gig, but it was literally like this a venue that would have been that is warm and sweaty regardless of the time of the year. On literally the hottest day ever recorded in the UK. Certainly was at the time. Whether it's been eclipsed since, I don't know. But so do the gig, go out, we do the gig. We hang around after. We get a picture with them, whatever. We go back to the hotel, and I say to my mate Sam, I'm like, "Do you want to get a drink at the bar?" And he's like, "Okay." And he sort of gives me this look, and I'm like, "Why is he looking at me like that?" But it's just let's get a drink. So he's like, "Okay, yeah." So we get a drink, and everyone is staring at us, and I'm like, "What the fuck's going on? Why are they all staring at me?" And as we got in the lift, I saw the lift had a mirror in, and I saw myself for the first time. And basically, where I'd been so sweaty in the gig, but it had dried in the time we were hanging round to meet them after, I basically was just covered in salt, and it looked like I was a man that had got cocaine all down me. Like, it just looked horrendous. Just this basically dried salt covering my body. I was like, dude, I can see why Sam didn't want to go for a drink.
What had you been eating?
No, because of the sweat.
No, I know, but like, there's salt in sweat just in general. But how much salt was in your sweat that day for it to have gone like that? That's a lot, right? That's a lot.
I assume so, yeah. And I also sweated a lot, so yeah, it was crazy.
Oh, wow. So that was a double whammy.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it was, man.
That's impressive.
Yeah, no, I guess, maybe. Also worrying, probably. Like,
yeah, also gross, but impressive, still.
It was a warm day.
That is a warm day.
I feel like that's a bit of a gross story now. I feel like I feel like that was an overshare. I apologise to all.
I'm definitely living it in.
Oh yeah, no, I don't doubt that.
Yeah, it's a good story. Yeah. Did you say you met the band that way?
Yes, but I weirdly in the pictures with the band, it doesn't look that bad. I mean, and I'm exaggerating it for comic effects. It wasn't that bad, but that was definitely the reason people were staring at us by the time we got back to the hotel. I think we were all still a little bit sweaty when we met the band. The funniest thing about meeting the band is there's Sam and I had seen them a couple of years prior in Bristol, and there's a photo of me, Sam, and the lead singer. And the lead singer is called Max, and he's clearly a lovely, wonderful guy. And not deliberately, but in the photo, there's a vibe of like me and Sam, these two sweaty dudes. Like, you can read the photo as a look on his face of, this isn't why I got into rock and roll. Like, to meet these bearded, slightly big, round white men. Well, I guess the fact that we're white is irrelevant, but I'm painting a stereotypical picture of who we are. And then the photo at the gig in London, my cousin's girlfriend was there, and it's just very amusing the difference that her being there makes to his expression on the photo.
That's sure, amazing.
Not deliberately, he seems like a very, very lovely man. But yeah, I've not really assessed the photo for sweat. I'll do so. Yeah.
There we go. Well, I'm excited to hear updates. Maybe you can get back to us next week, Chris.
Yeah.
Is there more trivia? I don't know what we're up to. Oh yeah, there is. Okay. Because we should get this. We got to get this back on the road. We've derailed this too much. Is what's happened here. Tarlok has a petroglyph, which is apparently like a rock carving, essentially, depicting Twee and La, the two fish, the sort of yin yang fish that were the spirits for the sun and the moon, or the ocean and the moon, whatever they were from the Northern Water Tribe. From the first season of the show. So that's what's them encircling each other is carved onto the stone wall behind the waterfall in Tarlok's office. I think that is good. Final bit of trivia, and a bit of a bummer one to end on, but it is the final one. This episode had the lowest viewership of any episode in Book 1.
Yeah, that's a shame. It's a good episode.
Yeah, I thought so. It would have made much more sense for the lower viewership to have been on 2 or 3 episodes ago with the Spirit of Competition, that one with all the love triangle bullshit. But there you go.
Nice. There we go.
That's Triv. Shall we very quickly to, try and keep this one concise? After all of the tangenting we've done this week, you can head over to patreon.com.
I can't. Because the listeners are screaming. I really fucking hate myself for asking this question. But the listeners are wondering. Did you deliberately forget Radcliffe, or is that a genuine mistake?
Oh shit! No, I genuinely forgot Radcliffe. That's
really
so disappointing.
Myself. I really hate myself for asking, but I know the listeners will be thinking it, so I couldn't not. Or the listeners would be wondering if I'd caught it.
So for those who don't know, we've recorded these two together, like this one and the one just before it. We recorded one this morning, took a break while we watched this episode, and then came back. And because I did the trivia really quickly, I didn't put it in. Because I literally banged the trivia out like in a few minutes this week to make sure, because we didn't have a big gap between recording sessions to watch the episode and do it. So yeah, the trivia got missed. I'm sorry, Chris. I feel like I've let you down.
That's all right. No, you've not let me down. You've literally only let yourself down on this one, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, no, there we go. Cool.
So nice when you said there's only one piece of, when I said there's only one piece of trivia left and it's a bummer one, were you thinking it was that?
No, and the minute you said there's only one piece of trivia left, I thought that. But then when you said and it's a bit of a bummer one, I was like, oh no, I think he's genuinely forgotten.
Yeah,
and I don't like, but I just know that know that the listeners will think.
I think this is officially me putting an end to us doing back-to-back recordings, because if I'm going to miss something like that, Chris, clearly doing them back-to-back is a bad
Let's do
idea.
a third. Let's do another right now. No, that podcast would be a fucking disaster if we tried to do a third one now.
Yeah, it would
you are too ill, and I'm too tired.
Clearly, at the end of our second one, the amount of tangenting we're doing, we've clearly podcasted too much. Is what's happened here. We flew too close to the podcast.
Yeah, and it doesn't help. Because Dad's ill, and I was out last night. I wasn't drinking or anything, but I didn't get in till late because rail strikes made travelling from London a nightmare. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, you can get us all the usual places.
Oh, by the way, this will be very much out of the news now as well. Can I just say, as much of a pain in the arse as it's caused people, that the rail strikes, I understand why they're striking. Like, I don't want that to sound like I'm not shitting on anyone about the rail strikes there. Just want to make that clear.
Yes. We are very much behind the people striking in the UK right now. Anyway, so, third time lucky. Shall we see if I can get this right? You can get us in all the usual places, one of which being the Patreon, patreon.com/nothing-but-static, where you can, for as little as $1 a month, support our podcast financially, which would help. It covers the bills. I think we're breaking even right now, so I really don't, do it or don't. Up to you. Taking a different tack to last week, Chris. Doing that, though, does give you the advantage of getting episodes a week early, so if you do want to support us, that's one way you can do it. Another way you can support us is, of course, by continuing to listen, telling a friend, or reviewing or interacting with the podcast in some way on your platform of choice. Listen to this on YouTube, like and subscribe. You're over there on iTunes, give us a 5-star review. You can do that in-app. You can give us a 2-star or a 1-star review if you want as well, but that's not as helpful. If you're on Spotify, I think you can review the podcast. Any platform, basically, you have the power to do that, and that helps tell the algorithm that you liked it, and that makes the algorithm more likely to share it with others. The other way, of course, in which you can, I know I've done all the ways, but you just keep listening, keep doing that. That's fun too. We like that. The other way, if you want to interact with us, you want to have your thoughts on this podcast. You're one of the people I offended by saying if you liked Avatar Way of the Water, you're wrong. You're welcome to yell at me in the comments below. So youtube.com/nothing-but-static-UK is the YouTube channel. Find the episode in question if you're listening to this elsewhere, and you can put a comment down below and get that going. You could try us on Twitter, but I don't use Twitter anymore, so it'd be pointless for even giving that out. You can email us, though, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk, should you wish to get in touch with us there. I think, other than telling you to go support the brilliant artwork of Raphodraws, so that's instagram.com/Raphodraws, RAPHODRAWS, I don't think there's anything else for us to cover. So yeah, go support Raphodraws by interacting with them, liking their work, maybe even buying some of the merch with their art on. Other than that, I think that's everything for this week, Chris. I did it with air. I've been Dan.
Well done, mate. That was nice. Nice and concise, that last bit.
Yeah. Not very unlike the rest of this podcast, but certainly.
Yes. Yeah.
I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next week when we sit down to be more concise when we review Out of the Past.